basically, I want to do a quick short talk on how to trial coaches. How to trial analysts, things like that. Basically, how do you find a good coach? How do you find a good analyst? And then how do you trial them? And then also kind of like touching on, like, if you are a coach analyst, what should you be looking to improve at? Now, obviously, if you're a bad coach, this isn't going to, fix everything. But at least it gives you some direction on what you need to improve on, the different positions, things like that. Now, this is going to be tier 2 and below. Now, I don't have enough experience in AL to really tell you what is needed. Check raise, thank you for the follow. But I can tell you at the tier 2 level, I've been in that tier for a long time. I've spent some time in tier 3. I've spent some time even below tier 3. So I can tell you exactly what is needed. And obviously, the biggest thing is that being thorough and a willingness to improve are obviously the most important things. How to trial a head coach. Now, again, I want to make it very clear that I have trialed with a lot of teams. And most of the teams that I trialed for, if not all of them, well, not all of them, but most of them didn't know how to trial staff. They didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to trial a head coach. They didn't know how to trial analysts, assistant coaches. Well, when I was trialing, it was extremely clunky. It was awkward. It was unprofessional. They had people coming in and me coaching the scrim blocks, and I didn't know what compositions they were running. I didn't know what they needed to work on. I didn't know what goals they had. I had never seen the team before. They didn't know my voice. I didn't know their voice. I didn't know what they wanted to improve on. And ultimately, scrim coaching is like a tiny percentage of what a coach actually even does. Low leadership, no goals, or nothing. And so it was awful. It was miserable. I hated scrim coaching. And there were a lot of times where I really didn't do very good on scrim coaching. Because a lot of the times players want a coach who go in and impress them with a ton of game knowledge. So, I came to trial as a head coach, and they didn't know what they wanted. They said, coach the scrim block, see how you fit with the players. And I would go in, I'd offer some little tidbits, like this is what we could do better. And then I'd walk away. Well, the players weren't impressed with your game knowledge. I'm like, well, first off, I'm a head coach. I don't have to, perfectly analyze the meta. That's a strategic coach and a micro coach. And secondly, I know a lot more than I said, but I know as a head coach, my job isn't to overwhelm the players with strategic advice or information. It's to kind of show my examples of a leadership, give them goals to work on, and, make sure the scrim block was productive. But teams didn't know that. Management didn't know that. Players didn't know that. And that's not really the player's fault. That's the management's fault. And that shows inexperienced management. And it happens with analysts. Like, what does an analyst do at a tier 3 level? What value do they actually bring? How do you use an analyst? So, again, I'm not trying to throw any of the teams that I've trialed for under the bus. There's a lot of teams I've trialed for that you guys don't even know about that I had very bad experiences with trialing. Hopefully, my job here is to kind of guide those teams and how to do the job better, because it could be done a lot better. Now, I'm not an amazing head coach. I still have a lot to learn, and I certainly wasn't then. But I've learned that you will never see the capability of the people that you trial if you don't know what you're doing. And most management does not know what they're doing. Okay, first one, how to trial for head coach. What are you looking for? You're looking for leadership, the ability to kind of take lead of a situation constructively. Not necessarily a loud mouth. Doesn't have to be a big, obnoxious person. Doesn't have to be a personality. Just a leader. Decision making, the ability to be able to make decisions. You're looking for somebody who can encourage. This is probably the most important one. You're looking for somebody who is going to be able to encourage an environment of learning and improvement. Somebody who is able to create and structure goals, accomplishing those goals, the ability to learn, the ability to improve. And then the last one is solid game knowledge. So they don't have to be geniuses, but having an overall understanding of the meta, being able to learn quickly, having an understanding of previous metas, showing that they're able to learn, and just obviously general game knowledge is important. So how do you actually trial that? How do you find somebody who has that? First thing I would suggest is to prepare a VOD review. So if you're the management, you go, okay, you're interested in head coaching, great. We would love to have you come in for a block, maybe, but I would love for you to do a VOD review before the block so you can actually set goals for the block. So give them a VOD. Say, okay, here's a map. Can you basically break down the macro, the big pictures, things that the team needs to work on, whether it's communication, ult planning, pathing, strategies, synchronization, ult use, whatever. And can you prepare a VOD review, like a structured 20, 35-minute VOD review? And can you do that before your scrim block? And then, you see how that goes. Does the guy know what he's talking about? Does he provide structure and leadership? Was the VOD review just listing off everything that went wrong? Or did it actually provide, okay, this is what we could work on at the block? And then how did the block go after that? And in the block, you can see how the coach does at keeping them accountable to that, answering questions that they might have. Okay, we're working on our ult usage. Well, what do I do in this situation, coach, over this last map? And then in addition to that, you want to meet and discuss his previous experience, his bad experiences with teams, his good experiences with teams, get a feel for him. How did he deal in different situations? What were some tough decisions that he made? What were some tough situations he was in? What were his greatest accomplishments? Not even like, what is your biggest weakness? But just find out, like, what is his history as a coach been? What are the things that he struggled with? What are the things that he or she has accomplished? Ask if you like it up to this point, ask, what are your plans, goals of the team? If you were to coach this team this next couple of weeks, what kind of structure do you like to set? Like, how do you plan your VOD reviews? How do you set goals for the team? How do you track improvement? How do you encourage improvement? And then last, and this is a really important one too, you need to go talk with previous staff. Players, because a lot of times players aren't always going to have a super rosy opinion of a coach if they didn't work for him for a long time, because unfortunately, as a head coach especially, you have to make tough decisions that players don't always like, but that are good for the players long term. But you want to talk with the people that have worked and like been a part of that person, worked with that person for a long period of time. The longer the better. Like, talk with the previous management. Talk with the analysts of the team that he worked with the assistant coach, the strategic coach. Anybody that's worked with him for the past year or her, go talk with them. Get their opinion of their professionalism, their capability, their work ethic. They're dealing with difficult situations. You need to get a feel for that. So again, prep a VOD review, have them deliver the VOD review, do that multiple times if necessary. Not too many times. You don't want to exploit their time. You need to meet, discuss his previous experiences, talk with him in a meeting, ask for plans, goals of the team, and then talk with previous staff. That's basically for head coach, okay? Strategic / micro coach, I kind of combine these two, not because they're similar in roles, but they're similar in how they relate to the team and what's needed for them. So strategic coach is like how to best play composition, what's the best decision in this certain, what's the best pathing, what's the best composition versus this composition, kind of like a macro strategy coach. And then micro is like really good coaching supports. How do you use Sigma secretion? Micro, okay? And they could be positionally specific or not, it depends. Communication is important, so being able to communicate, talk clearly, communicate your terms, specifically with either players or staff on what you're trying to say. Game knowledge is extremely important, more so than it is with the head coach, where the strength is communication, leadership, goal setting. With a micro coach, you need to know your crap. The best strategic coaches and micro coaches are not necessarily the most eloquent ones, but the ones that actually know the game. Now, they have to have a baseline of communication, but they have to know the game. They have to be really good at the game. They have to know everything about the game. And that's why a lot of good strategic / micro coaches are ex-players. It's the one coaching slot will specifically mean micro, not so much strategic, but micro coaches, ex-players, they know all the Zen tricks, all the Ana tricks, all the Winston tricks that aren't really important for a head coach to know, or even a strategic coach to know, but can be helpful at a micro level. Ability to learn, evolve. So you want to track their ability. Like, did they just know goats really well? What is their grasp of the current meta? What about the meta before that? As long as they've been in coaching, how quickly have they been able to pick up on metas and learn the players or strategic role within that meta? It's because there are some people out there that might know everything about goats, but they don't know squat about Reaper May. I prided Phase 2's ability to quickly learn the Reaper Main, which is why we did really well in playoffs, and that was largely due to my strategic coaches who were able to quickly figure out exactly what Reaper May, like what was the general gist of playing Reaper May to the maximum capability, and that's what made them good strategic coaches. It wasn't that just they knew goats really well, because it was the fact that they learned the new meta really quickly, and that helped us to succeed. And then succinct structure. So being able to get to your point quickly, being able to communicate your point quickly. There's a lot of strategic and micro coaches who can kind of go on and on and off. I worked with an amazing strategic coach named Saifi, and he was amazing at everything except for succinct structure. He would have these really, really cool ideas, but he wasn't always good at explaining them succinctly. And I would go to him like, Saifi, I love what you're saying, but you have to, like, what are you saying? Like, what? And he would deliver it to me really, really well, and it would be a really good idea, and it would work. And that's what you need from a strategic coach or a micro coach, is to be able to do kind of what Saifi did, is take all those convoluted ideas and just deliver it really, really clearly. And because people like me were stupid, right? Players are stupid. We need to understand exactly why or what we need to be doing. So how do you trial a strategic micro coach? First off, you need to do an analytical work. So this isn't necessarily running numbers, but breaking down a team fight. You give them a VOD, say like, listen, text, video, whatever. what's wrong with this? What are the big problems with this? And they can go more in detail than a head coach would with a VOD review in terms of like, okay, you guys are your Sigma's repeatedly out of position. The best position for Sigma on this map is this, and this is why. They're running this tempo of a composition, yada, yada, yada. Or your strategy, like you basically kind of do what the head coach did, but like more in detail. And it's easier because they don't actually have to deliver it to the players. They have to deliver it to the staff, and you guys can kind of look it over. You can involve the players in that process as well, of course. And that could be either individual, if you're looking like for a positional coach, you just have a POV recorded, or it could be a team. So it would be a third-person bird's-eye view of a scrim. Next, you need to discuss how he or she learns the meta. So what do you learn? Like, how do you do it? Like, what is your method? What is the method to the madness? Because again, you need to make sure that this person has the capability and has the tools to learn the next meta. Like, are they, oh yeah, I just kind of learned from a good coaching buddy of mine, and well, no, that's not what you want. You want to find somebody that, goes into the Overwatch League viewer, finds YouTube videos, Twitch videos, pulls from other coaches as well, takes notes, studies other players, takes notes at scrims, things like that. The ability to kind of upkeep. You need to talk with, again, previous staffs, but you can also talk with previous players, especially if they're a micro coach. If they're the micro coach that works with players one-on-one, you need to get their feeling on that as well. And then lastly, this is something a lot of people overlook, is you need to see if you're a good fit with the head coach. So assuming the head coach is involved in the process, you need to find out if your strategic coach, your micro coach, is a good fit with your head coach, because your head coach is like the most important position, okay? Because he provides the goal, the ability to accomplish goals. Everything else is just icing on the cake, right? Now they're necessary icing, but they're icing on the cake. But if you have a strategic or micro coach that are like completely incompatible, then that's a problem with either your head coach or your strategic coach, and it needs to be solved. And you don't want to bring on a strategic or micro coach that has an incompatible philosophy. So I like, again, bringing up Sci-Fate and Temporal when I worked at Phase 2, two very, very different in philosophy strategic coaches. They would yell at each other, argue back, not yell at each other, they didn't actually do that, but there was lots of intense discussion, disagreement, yada, yada, and then I would come in and be like, all right, listen, I would look over the discussion, I would go argue back and forth with them for a little bit, and then we'd come up with a plan, right? And the great thing was even though they didn't necessarily always agree with the situation, once we decided on something, they full-hearted supported it. If I said, Sci-Fate, we're not playing May Reaper Torb, we're playing Goats, I got Sci-Fate's full support, and Sci-Fate would make sure that we did a good job of that. If I said Temporal, I like Goats, but right now we need to be, I want to play some of the cheese here. This cheese, I think, is going to work. Well, guess what? Temporal is going to apply himself on how to do this, thing, that. So you need to make sure that that strategic coach isn't going to like throw a hissy fit, and is willing to support whatever direction the team or the coaching staff decides to go. And can they continue to provide value in that situation? Do they match the philosophy? Because you want your coaching staff to be a team. It is a team, and then there's the coaching staff team. Okay, last position, and this is the one that I'm the least experienced with. I do have some insight on this, but I'll gladly, if anybody else has additional insight, please share, is Analyst. This is one of the most, in my experience, abused positions in the game, because it's twofold. One, you have analysts that do a lot of really good work and work really hard, but their work is never used. And then you have a lot of analysts that just run a lot of numbers and think that's good enough, and then there's nothing of value in the numbers. Just the ability to produce a spreadsheet does not make you an analyst. The ability to produce a spreadsheet that is useful and then communicating that well in a way that is useful is what makes an analyst. Okay? So first thing you gotta look for is game knowledge. That's extremely important. You're not an analyst if you can just simply run the number of times that we used an ult and lost. You need to find out, okay, in this meta, what's the best ult to use first? How to use Zarya bubbles? How to use Reaper TP? How to use Moira Orb? You need to be able to answer that question, so that then you can take the numbers that you're running and be able to solve out, like figure out what's actually relevant. Because you don't want to be the analyst that goes, oh, this is how, we're misusing this. And I'm like, nah, that ain't it, chief. That ain't it. Okay? So game knowledge is important. In-depth game knowledge, almost to the level of strategic micro, if not equal. The ability to work with analytical software, so Microsoft Excel, I don't care what it is. You don't have, this is probably the least important one, but basically to encapsulate whatever numbers that you're running in an easy and efficient way. The ability to produce results, that's a big one. So like basically you need to be able to present, like, listen, our first fights on Koth are terrible, and I think it's because of our tank's positioning, right? Like that is a result that is useful to a head coach or an assistant coach. And so you need to be able to provide not just, oh, our ult, we lose more fights when we ult first. Like, that's not useful. Like, I need more than that. And a lot of that results from not just being able to run numbers, but having the game knowledge behind it. So you need to be able to produce results. And lastly, you need to be able to work efficiently and communicate results. and basically like work with your staff. So if you're the world's smartest analyst, but you can't communicate your information succinctly and quickly and efficiently, then you're of no use to me. If you can't follow, if I'm asking you to find out like how we're using Zarya bubbles and you can't do that, you're of no use to me. So you have to find a way to actually be usable and communicate clearly and get to your point across clearly. So how do you trial an analyst? Same thing the strategic microcoach, doing an analyst piece. Analyze the team by analyze a couple of scrim blocks. Give them an interesting result. So you want an analysis piece from your analyst that you're trialing. You need examples of previous work, again, to make sure that they're meta-proof of sorts. And then lastly, again, talk with previous staff. Be like, listen, was this person actually useful? Did you get anything out of it? So you need to find out with previous staff if this person was of use. Not just that are they good with numbers, but are the numbers that they provide actually useful? So hope that was helpful. Chat, do you have any questions?